All right. Another guy that I could say the same thing about, and one of my favorite dudes that's kind of come into my world in the last year. One of my favorite people, exactly. But a guy that I've been doing a lot of work with, a guy who's working with some other people in this room. Christina Cross is actually going to introduce him at Reunion because she's been doing some great things with him. He's been working with Robert Nickel just over the last month or so and has gotten months worth of value, right, Robert? You've gotten months worth of value just in the few weeks that you've worked with this guy. He's an absolute marketing animal, really, really skilled in a lot of things, creating Facebook, creating online funnels, Facebook, PPC, gets all that stuff, social media. I really know him as somebody who's skilled at personal branding, really knows how to take somebody and create a brand around them. My friend Mike Calhoun, some of you might know, who runs Board of Advisors that I work with. If you see Mike do anything online, it's not Mike. It's this guy, right? He's created kind of the brand around him, written the copy behind him. Anything you see visually or anything you see Mike saying online is actually this dude. He might have pulled it out of Mike's head, but this is the guy that makes it pretty. Also really skilled in terms of traditional media and media hacking. Okay, so a few weeks ago, he did a quick interview with me and got that interview picked up by The Motley Fool. So I was published by The Motley Fool. In another week or two, I've got an article that's coming out in Forbes or Fortune, one of those two. Forbes, yep, in Forbes. So this guy is unbelievably connected in the media world, but understands how to get this stuff picked up, right? Real media, real stuff. And so that's just one of the many things he's great at. I said, man, I want you in this group because we need you. So he has been somebody that's presented a lot of content for us over the course of the last year. His results speak to what kind of value he brings, and anybody that's worked with him understands that. I said, man, when you speak about whatever you want to, because every time he talks, he always shares something of great value. So let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. Jeremy Knauff. You're the man, buddy. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so a couple of quick things about me, since I know a lot of you guys don't know me. When I was younger, spent some time in a cult. Took one of my first clients in my first business from being on the verge of bankruptcy into a $54 million deal with the Hilton. And more recently, I'm in the process of rebuilding my business after having a health crisis almost kill me. So that's me in a nutshell. So what we're going to talk about today is the one thing that is absolutely essential to building a successful business. Does anyone have any guess as to what that may be? Clint? Close. Further down the line. Give you guys a hint. These people have more of it than any of us ever will. It's not plastic surgery. Well, it probably is, but not in this context. Exactly. Exposure. Not like that, you sickos. We want to get exposure in the right places, all right? That's anywhere that our customers are going to be, in authoritative publications, in social media, in our own content, videos, blogs, whatever. But most of us don't have as much exposure as we'd like. Why is that? It all comes down to three things: time, priorities, and knowledge. Now, we all know that we need it, and we all know that we're going to make time for things that are a priority. So I think we can agree that the first two are bullshit. So what we're going to talk about today is the knowledge. We're going to talk about how to create the exposure. So the first step is to demonstrate your expertise. Now, I mentioned earlier that I spent some time in a cult. This was where I learned this lesson in a very powerful way. Now, this was a great cult. We had the best uniforms. We got to blow shit up, and evidently I'm missing a picture there. But let me get a show of hands. How many of you all have military background? Okay, so I'm going to call on one of you guys in a minute. We had... There you go. There you go. All right, so I was a young Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. We were having a change of command ceremony. Our new captain was coming in, and I had never spoken to the guy, never even met him. My first interaction with him was something that you would never expect to happen in the military. So, following the change of command ceremony, he comes walking into the company office. He's a giant mountain of a man, and he had this booming voice, sounded like Mufasa from The Lion King. So as he comes into the office, Knauff, get me the paperwork for blah, 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 some program that is irrelevant, but something in the military that I was handling as a Lance Corporal that would typically be handled as a staff NCO. He says, bring the paperwork in here, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to make some changes. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. I looked at him and I said, sir, we're not going to do that. We're doing it this way, here's why. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity, gave me plenty of time to think about how badly I may have just fucked up. And then he turns to me and he says, okay, Lance Corporal, you seem to have it under control. And that was a great lesson for me because it shot to hell this theory that a lot of us have that just show up, bust your ass, do great work, and you're going to get recognized, you're going to move forward. That's not true. We have to show people what we're capable of. And by demonstrating that, that's what I did. I explained to him why his idea was not the right path, and I explained what we were doing and why it was working. And that was kind of interesting. It was a little bit of a red pill moment for me, especially considering how much he looked like Morpheus from The Matrix. But we have to be careful when we're demonstrating our expertise. We've all seen these kind of people where they're talking about how great they are. They're talking about how awesome they are. They're bragging about themselves, and that's not the way we do that. It really creates the wrong impression, right? Comes off a little creepy, a little bit sleazy. We have to understand who our audience is. Let me get a show of hands. How many of you here are over 40? All right. Does anybody recognize this picture? All right. Christina, can you tell me something about this particular mission that was unique?
That was the explosion of the Challenger.
Can you stand up so that people can hear you?
That's
Can
the
you-
explosion of the Challenger.
Can you stand up? Indeed you are. All right, so what was unique about Challenger, though? And she was what? Yes. Okay, so this is an example of understanding your audience. So I was a young 10-year-old kid, fourth grade, and many of you guys who are older probably remember they pulled the TVs out, or at least for everyone I've ever talked to in that age range, they pulled the TVs out and we got to watch this thing live on television. This was not the one to watch live. So shuttle goes up, about a minute and a half later, boom. This teacher stood here, completely speechless. She had no idea what to say. It got to be ridiculously awkward. So she's staring around at a bunch of 10-year-olds looking for the answer at this point. She says, does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Well, I looked around. Nobody's saying anything, so raised my hand. She says, yes, Jeremy. What do you think about this? I said, I think they should send more teachers into space. Yeah. She was not my audience, though. My audience were the other children. They found it hilarious. Not so much for her. So we have to be careful of how our message is conveyed to our audience, and we don't really need to. What's that?
Lawyers. More lawyers.
There you go. So we have to understand our audience whenever we're crafting a message, right? When we're talking about, let's say we're creating a piece of content, we're going to explain how to do something, or we're going to explain our unique insight in a way that helps them. That's how we have to approach our content, because that's going to demonstrate our expertise. It's not talking about how awesome we are or talking about all the things that we've accomplished. So then we're going to take this content and we're going to put it all over the place. All right, there's social media, there's blogs, there's videos, there's being on podcasts, all of these things. Matt, there you are, great example of this. How many books are you up to now?
6 or 7.
Okay, so Matt's putting out a ton of content. He's got the videos with Mastermind going out all the time. Those are examples. It's constantly sharing useful content. So step 2 is build and leverage the right relationships. All of you guys understand that. That's why you're here. Good example of this is Marvel, right? We've probably all seen these movies. I think we can all agree that any of these people are badasses individually. But then they all come together and they can do so much more. And we want to take that same approach, and we want to look at it from a media perspective. So we can leverage our context, whether it be individual relationships, people in the media, television producers to get us on the news, things like that. What we're doing is we're tapping into two things. We're tapping into their authority and their audience, right? If I came in here and introduced someone to you and you didn't know who I was, that probably wouldn't mean anything to you. If Matt walked in here, for those of you who know him and don't know me, if Matt walked in here and introduced somebody, that would carry a lot more weight. So we want to take the same approach here. We're taking people that already have a built-in audience, and we're leveraging that to create that authority, create that awareness. The thing is, we have to have a process, and most of us don't have it. Robert's great at that. His whole business is built around the processes so that their VAs can do great things. But we have to take that same approach for the media. Now, we've all got bigger networks than anyone did 10, 20 years ago. We've all got a lot more people to keep in touch with. And that's not even counting just our friends and our close family, but then all of the business contacts we have. And then when we start tapping out into media, then you've got all of these other people, and it becomes a pain to keep up with that. And you'll forget people, they'll fall through the cracks. And then, of course, you know how the algorithms work. If you're not engaging with somebody regularly, they're not going to show up in your feed. So now you're going to forget to follow up with them if you haven't engaged with them for a while. So one of the processes we use is we'll actually have a spreadsheet of all the people that we need to stay in touch with. So what we can do is we can pop in there to their LinkedIn page, their Facebook page, go to their YouTube channel, go to their blog. We can go to all of the places where they're actively producing some kind of content, and we can engage with them. The problem is, if we're not doing this, we're going to forget about this. This gives us the ability to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Now, there's a variety of ways you could configure something like this. We've got our way, and obviously it's evolved over time. But if you have a process like this, you'll be able to stay on top of people regardless of what the algorithm's showing you, regardless of how busy you get. And it's even something you could task certain people with depending on the relationships. Another cool thing you can do is set up Google News alerts. Is anyone familiar with these? Okay. So let's say you're trying to get on somebody's radar. You want to do a JV with them, or maybe there's a particular journalist somewhere. If you put their name in here, as soon as they put out a piece of content and Google finds that, and if they're authoritative, Google's going to find that content pretty damn quickly. So what happens is you've now got their name. You're going to get a notification in your inbox as soon as that comes in, as soon as Google finds it. You can now pop over there, be the first one to share that piece of content, drop a comment on it, engage with them in some way. When you need to reach out to them for something, you want them to feature you, or you want to do some kind of partnership with them, you've now got a lot stronger ground because you've already added value, and probably, if you're doing it right, at multiple steps prior to that. So this gives you the ability to kind of keep on top of them without constantly scouring the internet. When you set these up, what you want to do is you want to have them pop in immediately. It's a pretty simple setup. The next thing we need to do is we need to get our expertise in front of the media. So we've got our own audience. We've got the audience of the people in our network that we can leverage. But then the bigger audience here, of course, is going to be the media. So when we talk about the media, we're talking about all of the tier one type of stuff, Entrepreneur, Forbes, anything on television. Something that is a large audience and it's an authoritative platform. That's going to carry a lot of credibility. That's why you see everybody putting all of these logos of news organizations on their social media, little banner images. That's why they, if they happen to be quoted in Forbes or Entrepreneur or something, they'll drop that link in their email signature a lot of times. Problem is, most of us approach the media wrong, right? It's the same idea that we have with creating the content. A lot of people get that wrong. Same idea here. A lot of people will reach out to the media and they'll talk about, hey, I've got this great company, I've got this great product, you should write about me, I'm awesome. And that's completely the wrong way to do that. It's going to turn off any journalist. And the thing is, you're not the only one sending them. They're getting hundreds of these a day. But the cool thing is, everyone in the media has the same problem as all of you do. Who here does not have as much content out there or as much media exposure as you guys want? All right, pretty much everyone. The people in the media have to create 100 times more content than any of us do. So they're constantly looking for great stories. So if you can give them a way to make their job easier, you can give them a story that basically creates itself and present that in a way that they're going to actually care about, you're going to have a lot easier time getting them to feature you. So there's a great way to get in front of these people. We all probably have Facebook, right? Their targeting is pretty impressive. There we go. So we've actually got, with the paid ads, we've built out a custom audience to target everyone that works at every major media publication. So, what's that? Yes. So now what we can do is we can take that great piece of content and we can push that out in a paid ad to all of these media people. Now let's say, I'm Joe Smith, a writer for Entrepreneur, and I want to know about some real estate topic. Give me a topic, Matt. Yeah, and all right, perfect. So let's say Matt did a quick video about that, and then we push that out to the media, and Joe Smith with Entrepreneur is looking for an article, is planning to write an article about that. Right there is his answer. And it's not Matt saying, hey, look at me, I'm great. It's Matt saying, hey, here's what's going on in this situation. Here's how this is all going to play out. So he's demonstrating his expertise. You do something like this, there's a very good chance that if somebody has a need for that story, you're going to be the one that they reach out to. So it's a really powerful way to get in front of everybody. It's fairly inexpensive to run Facebook ads, and the targeting is just dead on. So you get in front of the right people very easily. Oops. All right, so we talked about how to create the kind of exposure that builds loyalty and trust. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I guess not. Say again?
It's in the directory.
You hear me? Is this on? Can you talk a little bit on content swaps, cross-promoting? A lot of what we've been doing here when we're on stage, some folks are asking for interviews, reciprocal interviews on podcasts. How does that work at your level with content swapping? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, it absolutely is a great tactic. I mean, if you've got similar audiences, you're basically sharing those. They could be the same kind of people, but totally different people at the same time. So it's a great tactic. The key is to not just share it, but also share it with some context, right? You've got your audience, I've got my audience. If I take a piece of content you created, you being on a podcast, for example, and I just share it, and that's all, there's no, no context to it, that's not going to be as powerful. But if I share it and say, what's your name? Gabe. If I say, hey, you got to check out this great interview by Gabe. He explains X, Y, Z. If you have that problem, this could be really useful for you. You put some context into there, and it's going to carry some weight. Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand you get the exposure for us, but are you able to actually do ghostwriting too? Like, do you provide writing services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to give it a quick shout. So I like to come up with ideas that I think are good, and then someone else go execute them. And that's what Jeremy does. And he just sat down with me. We spent a few minutes, a couple times, just to kind of figure out exactly what we're trying to accomplish. I send him bullet points, and his team writes these beautiful articles that I apparently wrote. And so to go on that, so it's like, and we're in a process. So I want to be in all the tier 1 stuff, mostly because as people are Googling our company, they're searching my name and its association with the company, right? So I need a bunch of tier one publications and credibility there to help our sales team. That's all it's for, right? Really, at the end of the day. And so we're in a process right now moving up the ladder. We've been getting published in some lower level publications that you've heard of, but still don't have quite the same pull, backlinking, cross-sourcing, some stuff that he wants to get to. So we're in a process here to build towards what we're trying to accomplish. But in the meantime, it's already been really, really good. So his team can write, they can do copy, they can do, so strategically it'll help you set it out. Then based on how much involvement you want to have, what you want to contribute to that process, he will then build a package for you to get that out there. So we want to move a little bit quicker, so we're going pretty heavy with that, and other people want to move a little bit slower. So, but I just want to give him kudos, he's been great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and part of creating authority too, whoa, that was loud. Part of creating authority too is, when somebody is looking, not just your students or your people or, anybody who's looking to do business with you, partner with you, and this is something that I can't believe I haven't thought about more, but they're going to Google you, right? And if they Google you, we always think about if we have a course or whatever, we want to make sure we don't have a bunch of bad reviews about our course or something like that. We all think about that. That's right out there in front of us, right? That's pretty typical for us to think about that, be sensitive to that. But if someone's looking to partner with you or someone's looking to do some higher level collaboration with you, they're going to Google you. And if you just don't show up at all, like you're buried, if someone Googles your name and you're just, they find one picture of you on the 8th page of the pictures or something like that, using, the strategies that Jeremy uses or that he can provide, that has you showing up in those places. And the more you do it, the more you're going to show up. So as Robert Nickel does more and more, it gets placed in more and more articles and shows up in more and more interviews. When somebody now is like, oh yeah, Rocket Station, maybe I should hire 100 VAs for my giant operation from Robert Nickel. Let's Google Robert Nickel. And the whole front page is all pictures of Robert Nickel, pictures of him speaking, pictures on Forbes, pictures on Fortune, all these different things. That kind of authority, you can't put a price on it. I mean, you absolutely can't put a price on that kind of authority. So something that I'm going to be working with Jeremy on is, when you Google Matt Andrews, funny enough, there is a famous production music producer named Matt Andrews. And there's another, I think he's in the UK, another bald, not as good looking as me, but another bald Matt Andrews out there. And there's a bunch of pictures of him and not of me. And so some people will Google Matt Andrews and think that uglier Matt Andrews is me, all right? So just my sheer vanity makes me want to work with Jeremy and say, Jeremy, I want every time someone Googles Matt Andrews for there to be pictures of me on the stage here at Real Estate Influencer or at Family Mastermind. I want pictures of, me and the people I'm collaborating with together. So it's long-term branding too, and think about it that way. If somebody's going to Google you, you can control that, right? You can't instantly buy it, right? But you can build that over time. And so getting placed in these places, that's all part of this process. That makes sense to you guys? And so that's the kind of thing that Jeremy's good at, and that's what I lean on him about, is to kind of understand how can we build this long term, how can we build our brand, how can we build true authority with real media and with real content that builds that over time. So any other quick questions for him before we let him go? All right, cool. Let's give him a hand. Jeremy, great job, buddy.